All right, hi everyone. Welcome back to our 10 tips series. Again, I'm Allie with Healthy Acadia and Maine Snap Ed. And today we're really going to be diving into our fruits and vegetable category in our My Plate. But before we get started on that, just a little review of what we did last week. First of all, I want to ask how your 2 action steps went, maybe about, having less sugary beverages or trying to have a more regular eating schedule. Check in with the goals you wrote last time, see how well you did. If you want to, reach out and let me know. I'd be really curious to hear about it. And just a little reminder that last time we did a whole overview of My Plate, and we talked about how it's important to eat something from all of our food groups because that's a great way to make sure we're getting all of our vitamins, nutrients, minerals that we can't just get from one food group or the other. And then we also learned about our sometimes foods and everyday foods. So things that are good to have in food groups that we can not get enough of, have all that we want, and then ones that are more of treats and good to have sometimes. So good things to keep in the back of our mind, especially as we move forward with today's lesson. All right, so for today's lesson, we're going to be focusing on our fruits and vegetables. And if you remember from last week, our key message is that half of our plate should be fruits and vegetables. And luckily, the thing I like about My Plate is that it's a great visual reminder as well. So if we actually look, we see that this quarter and this quarter are taking up half of our plate. So it's a good visual reminder as well in case you forget what some of these key messages are or what quantities you're supposed to eat certain food groups in. So starting with our fruits, fruits are great because they're high in potassium, vitamin C, which helps our immune system, a bunch of different vitamins. They're naturally low calorie and low in sodium, and they're also a little naturally sweet. So maybe in the afternoon when you want something a little sweet, instead of reaching for that candy bar, you could reach for a handful of raspberries. So that's really why I like them as well. All right, and then for our vegetables, kind of the same benefits. Lots of vitamins, lots of minerals, lots of nutrients, high in fiber, low calorie. So these are a really great option as well. All right, so now if you want to look at one of those handouts that got emailed to you, our My Plate, My Wins one for this week, there's 2. And so our first one is focus on fruits. And so some really important things to think about this one is that there's many different ways to buy fruits. So you can get them fresh, canned, or frozen. There's pros and cons to both, to all 3. One pro is that they're all kind of the same nutrient-wise. So anything that's canned or frozen was picked at their prime and then canned or frozen right away. So there's no difference nutrient-wise compared to fresh, frozen, or canned. So that's a good pro. Other pros is price. Sometimes fresh can be a little bit more expensive. So if you're shopping on a budget, canned and frozen could be a good option. Also just good to think about what your recipe calls for. If I'm going to be making some smoothies, then maybe I want to buy it already frozen. If something calls for fresh, then maybe buying it fresh, but if something can be canned and they're on sale, then buying it canned. So also thinking about your recipe and what your budget is. If you are going to be buying canned fruits, we do want to think about what they're canned in. So focusing on 100% fruit juice, trying to stay away from those that are canned in syrup because that's just added sugar that we don't need in our diet. But if they only have canned items that are in syrup, then maybe rinsing them out in a colander beforehand to kind of get rid of that extra sugar. So there are ways around it if you only find them in syrup. But definitely thinking about wanting 100% juice. And then anything you buy fresh, of course, you always want to wash it, especially now with a lot of sickness going on and us staying home, really making sure we're washing all of our produce. Just to make sure there's no germs on it or dirt or anything that could hurt our immune system. So now if we look at that handout about our fruits, I really love the tip of being a good role model. So now that a lot of us are home and our children are eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner with us, being that role model of making sure you're making half your plate fruits and vegetables, having fruit at every meal, or if your kid wants a snack in the afternoon, maybe giving them an apple instead of a bunch of chips. So definitely trying to be that role model while we're at home. Next, if we go to the Vary Your Vegetables handout, which is another set of 10 tips, kind of for vegetables, the same things that apply for fruits. So obviously you can get them fresh, canned, and frozen. All the same pros and cons that I just talked about apply. So making sure you're getting low sodium canned items for vegetables, making sure they're canned in water instead of any extra additives. If your recipe calls that you can use frozen or canned, that may be the more budget-friendly option, especially if something's on sale. I know I use beans a lot, so when I see that beans are canned on sale, I know they're gonna last a long time in my pantry. I use them a lot, so I definitely stock up then. So just knowing what you use a lot and buying when things are on sale, especially with vegetables and canned and frozen items, that's a great way that we can kind of save money and improve our diet. And so now I'll give you guys a moment to pause the video and think of 2 action steps, just like last time, of things maybe you want to do differently or change or try to try and build more fruits and vegetables into your day and really get that half of our plate is fruits and vegetables. So feel free to pause here. All right, so hopefully you came up with some awesome action steps. Remember to feel free to tell your family members about it, engage them in this process, having someone, having your kids or your partner have a say in what's for dinner and working on these goals together is just a great way to engage a lot of people and really make it happen. It really does happen at the dinner table with the family. So engaging your family in this opportunity is really great. And then lastly, before we get into our quarantine kitchen, I'll just leave you with one key message for our fruits and vegetables. If you don't take anything else away, this is the big thing. You really want to try to eat all of your colors. So just like last time where we want to make sure we're eating something in every food group, for our fruits and vegetables, really making sure we're eating something of every color. So carrots for orange, raspberry for red, blueberries for blue, eggplant for purple. By getting in all those different colors, you're again going to get in so many more vitamins and nutrients that just one color doesn't supply. So really make sure you're varying your colors and making sure half your plate is fruits and vegetables. And with that, let's get cooking. Cool. All right. Welcome everyone to our second quarantine kitchen. Today we are going to be making roasted vegetables, which is in our Eating Better on a Budget 10 Tips cookbook, which you'll get mailed to you after you complete this course. And so the first thing we need to do is preheat our oven. So I'm going to preheat it to 400 degrees. And then today we're going to be roasting some carrots, some red onion, some red pepper, some asparagus, and some potatoes. The reason I picked these is because they were just what I had in my fridge and were around the house, especially while we're all trying to stay at home and not make too many trips out. You can really roast any vegetables that you have, so don't feel like you need to make an extra trip for this recipe. Definitely check out local farmers markets or farms or food pantries to see what they have for fresh produce. Definitely supporting those local farms are really important right now. Follow social distancing guidelines. And before I get started on cutting and prepping, I have cleaned all of my surfaces. They're sanitized. I'm going to wash all of the vegetables, make sure they're nice and clean, and I'm also washing my hands for 20 seconds. So make sure you're following good food safety guidelines as well. Sweet. All right, so now that we've thoroughly washed our produce, it's time to now cut and slice all of our produce. It's really important to make sure they're of even thickness, even length, so that way it all roasts at the same time and they're cooked the same way. You don't want one too overdone or underdone. So today I'm going to be slicing them in just nice little slices. And just while you're slicing, make sure you're aware of where your other hand is. Maybe use the claw. Just really paying attention to our knife safety skills. All right, and then for our asparagus, the key thing here is just to make sure to kind of cut off the white and purple bottom, and then I'm just going to give them a good cut in half so they're a similar length and width to our peppers that we sliced earlier. And then for our potatoes, because they're a little thicker and starchier, for these ones we can kind of just make nice kind of thin French fries, and those will take almost just as long to roast as our other vegetables. So kind of a nice thin, and then I cut them in half. All right, so then for our onion, This one is kind of hard to do in slithers, so we're gonna cut it in half and then chop off both ends. We can get rid of all this outside peel that we don't need. And then for this one, how I like to roast them is if you just kind of like cut and make little triangles. This is, we break it open. This is like a good amount to roast that will roast at the same speed as everything else we've cut. All right, and then lastly for our carrots, we're gonna peel them first. So, I always like to peel into my sink because I just think it's easy to then clean up afterwards. All right, so then once you peel off just a little bit of the outside layer, you don't want to go too crazy. All right, and then we'll cut off both of the ends. We don't really need those. And then for these, I think we'll cut them in half so they're a similar size to things we've already cut. Being careful where our fingers are. And then we can halve them and then quarter them. And that's a pretty good size, similar to other things we've cut and should roast at a very similar speed. For this tiny one, I think I'll just halve it, and that looks good to me. All right, so now that we're finished slicing and cutting all of our vegetables, our next step is to throw them all in a bowl, and we need to make sure we cover them with olive oil or vegetable oil and then whatever spices we want. You'll notice the recipe in your cookbook says to put them right on the pan and then kind of drizzle everything on top. I really like to dump everything in and then mix it with my hands, and then this is also a great place where you can bring your kids in. If you have younger kids and you don't want them cutting stuff, this is the perfect step, and it's kind of messy and fun to help them mix it up all together. You'll also notice in your cookbook that it has measurements, and I just kind of like to eyeball it. So just drizzle a little bit, like enough to make sure it all get covered. You can always add more. And then also I encourage you to get creative with your spices. This is quarantine kitchen, so you're not going to want to be making extra trips out to the grocery store. So use whatever you have available. So I'm going to be using some salt, so maybe like a little bit less than a teaspoon of that. Some pepper. Let's see, I definitely want to add some garlic. So I'll probably add maybe 2 teaspoons of this. Mix it all together. Smells really good. And then I'm also going to add in some paprika. This is totally optional. This is just me getting creative. It adds like a nice little red texture to it. And then lastly, I'm going to add just a little bit of rosemary. Trying something out here, mixing it with the paprika. You can also use chili powder if you have it, red pepper flakes, whatever you have available. Again, experiment and get creative. So now that we have it all in the bowl, we can mix it all up, making sure everything gets a nice, even coat. If you need to add more olive oil, go ahead. Or if you want to add any more of the spices, definitely go ahead and just do it to your liking. Then once you're all done mixing them up in your bowl, throw them onto some baking sheets, and you want to make sure nothing is on top of anything else because that's going to slow down the roasting. So make sure they're nice, evenly spread out across 1 or 2 pans, depending on how many vegetables you cut. Right, and now that they're on our baking sheets and our oven has fully preheated, we can throw them in the oven. They want to cook for around 30 to 40 minutes. All right, so our timer just went off. I made sure to turn off my oven. And yeah, time to pull them out and see how they are. I did pull them out halfway through and kind of mix them around. But yeah, these look good and they smell super awesome too. So as we can see, they're nice and browned and soft. So our kind of thicker vegetables, like our potatoes, those are what we want to check to make sure they're nice and soft, cooked all the way through. Maybe some of our thicker carrots. Well, thank you for joining me for our second quarantine kitchen. Again, remember, just use vegetables you have around the house. No need to go out to the grocery store for an extra visit, especially while why we're all trying to stay at home. Get creative with your spices, and remember to use those different colors. So today we had our purple onion, red carrots, orange carrots, red pepper, some golden potatoes, and some green asparagus. So really trying to get those colors in and making sure half our plate is fruits and vegetables. So roasting vegetables is a great place to start. Again, feel free to email me with any questions you have or about your action steps. I'd love to hear them. My email will be at the end of this video again. But yeah, be on the lookout for the next video, and that week we'll be diving into whole grains. So get ready to learn about whole grains.